Everyone's good at heart, but they can mess up and do bad things. Even when someone hurts you, it's better to forgive them and believe in them than to resent them. Growing up hearing this, Li Hao easily trusted the professor. He never thought things would turn out that way between them. After his mom died, Li Hao had to support the family, and word of this spread around school. When a theft happened at school before, Li Hao became the suspect because he was poor. Whether it was true or not, once you're labeled a thief, no one wants to be your friend. He kept to himself before college. Li Hao talked about all this at the counseling office, then suddenly brought up the professor he met 5 years ago. Back in college, Li Hao was heading to ceramics class. On the way, he ran into an enthusiastic underclassman and chatted for a bit. From this guy, Li Hao learned about a professor that upperclassmen apparently all skip. Everyone in ceramics hated him. Li Hao thought about it. He remembered being hated, isolated, and insulted himself. The underclassman was about to continue, but Li Hao cut him off, saying he didn't want to hear it. He walked toward the professor's studio, looking at the course name and professor's name on the doors. He slowly pushed the door open. A man with a tall, slender build came into view. This was Professor Lai Shuyang, who had a name that sounded like a woman's. The moment he saw the professor, maybe their story was already set in motion. The professor was demonstrating for students up front. The girls below were whispering. They were all saying how handsome the professor was. Some upperclassmen said not to be fooled by his looks, that he was whatever. Overhearing this, Li Hao became even more curious about the professor. His first impression was that the professor suited ceramics well. His eyes were clearly distinctive. Suddenly the professor looked at Li Hao. Their eyes actually met. Meeting for the first time, he felt like only the professor wasn't a stranger here. After class everyone left, but Li Hao was still messing around with ceramics. The professor suddenly appeared behind him, asking why he wasn't going home yet. Startled, he twisted the ceramic piece in his hand. Li Hao told the professor he wanted to stay and keep practicing. He wasn't good with the pottery wheel, so he tried to fix the wobbling ceramic. He turned to ask the professor why he wasn't leaving, but the professor just reached out. He turned Li Hao's head back, telling him to focus. He even worked alongside Li Hao. The professor's hands were so warm and gentle. Step by step, he guided him to make a hole in the center, then pressed down hard. This strange feeling left Li Hao flustered. Gradually, the ceramic in his hands started taking shape. The professor whispered softly in his ear, telling him he could press a little deeper. That was seriously tempting. The professor was teaching him how to use the pottery wheel, and there was this nice smell. He thought the professor was thin, but comparing his hand to his own, he realized that wasn't the case. Surprisingly, he had a nice build. Maybe being so close made him uncomfortable. Li Hao was sensitive enough to blush. He turned to make conversation with the professor, looking at his focused eyes, wondering what he was thinking. Those bright, sparkling eyes were really appealing. Who knows what kind of desire was hidden inside them. The professor patiently guided Li Hao until late. After that, Li Hao grew more and more curious about what kind of person the professor was. The professor made a white glazed altar. Taking an altar with a regular beauty and making it balanced and complete with that glaze, that was his unique charm. Staring at the altar the professor made, he couldn't help but admire it. It even had a kind of imposing presence. From then on, Li Hao often got help from the professor. Thanks to him, his progress showed in his final assignment. The underclassmen also praised him for improving so much in such a short time. Li Hao felt really pleased. The two walked together. The underclassman kept muttering that he made his too big. It blocked his view so he couldn't see the path ahead. Sure enough, he tripped on a stone, taking down Li Hao's piece with him. The underclassman quickly apologized. Looking at the scattered pieces, Li Hao could only say helplessly that it was fine. He wanted to make another one overnight in the potter room. The ceramics TA told him no working at night today. The underclassman decided to just not do it and skip the workshop too. Li Hao wasn't satisfied. He had to at least try. If only someone could lend him a pottery wheel. A door closed. Looking up, it was actually the professor. He was already off work. Seeing his student take the assignment seriously, he had to support him. Li Hao was grateful to the professor. Even the ceramic he was refiring broke by accident. He really wanted to do well. Such a shame. The professor said ceramics always break. Better to experience it early. He said this while helping smooth out the fine lines on the ceramic. Li Hao couldn't help but wonder how the professor made such a large altar. Completely flawless. He couldn't even make a small vessel properly. He also said he really liked the description of the professor's piece. In a perfect world of white light, one can quietly shift between purity and 4 colors. The professor's gaze was meaningful. Watching the student recite the description of his work, the professor found it kind of embarrassing. Seems like there was a deeper meaning. Watching the student talk about his work with such interest, the professor suddenly remembered. Someone once said they were sick of him and his work. Li Hao was still talking. He suddenly turned. The professor was smiling at him. After several hours of work, though he couldn't fire it, at least he remade it. You're going to give me an F, right? The professor didn't say clearly. He noticed the professor's clothes were always clean, and he'd even wear white shirts to work. Really surprising. Meanwhile, he always got the area under his apron all dirty. The professor reached out and wiped the dirt off Li Hao's face, telling him it's good when he's not afraid to get dirty. He used to be like that too. At that moment, he suddenly remembered seeing in the news the professor, who was once around his age. He didn't understand why everyone hated the professor. That was the first time he wanted to become someone like the professor. He thanked the professor and was about to change. The professor casually said, "Go ahead." He also put on his coat, listening to the rustling sound of the student changing behind him. The professor glanced. From the waist to the shoulders to the entire upper body, all in view, Liu Hao was focused on changing. Suddenly the professor said it was late, asking if he wanted to come to his place. Maybe he also noticed the professor kept watching him. About the professor's invitation, Liu Hao just wanted to say, "What? Want to see more?" He quickly said his rental place was just up ahead. He could just walk home. Let's just pretend he didn't hear that. The professor seemed satisfied and smiled. He didn't expect the student to be so honest, revealing he lived alone. There's time ahead. He'd let him go this time. After the ceramics course ended, everyone was discussing grades. Liu Hao looked at his grade. The professor only gave him an A-. Soon after, the professor called him to his office. Opening the door, the professor was dressed formally today. Looked like he was going out. He didn't expect he'd bring him along. He hadn't figured out where they were going yet. But his body honestly followed the professor. Turns out the professor took him to the exhibition he'd always wanted to see. The works here were truly stunning. He couldn't help but check out the artist. His name was QAG. Turns out he graduated from his school. Every time he saw good work, his heart would beat so fast. The professor came over to tell Ji Hao the reason for his high score wasn't just his talent, but also his attitude. Staying behind to practice every time, knowing he couldn't finish, but still persisting to the end. That was a plus. Just the exam alone was more complete than other students' work. He didn't expect the teacher to think so highly of him. Bringing him to this exhibition was also hoping he could become a good artist. But how long would it take to become an artist? He was already struggling just with classes. The professor told Liu Hao he wouldn't let his students have that kind of worry. He'd always help him, even after graduation, until he could stand on his own. He planned to start taking on grad students the year after next, though there was no precedent. Liu Hao wondered, could he become the professor's first student the year after next? Suddenly a bunch of people pushed over this way. He also inadvertently touched the professor's hand. The crowd coming in were mostly couples. Tomorrow was Christmas. The professor's shampoo smelled really nice. He was greedily soaking it in. The professor suddenly turned and asked Liu Hao what he wanted for dinner. Liu Hao jolted, almost caught by the professor. His cheeks flushed. He looked down and said anything's fine. He didn't expect the professor would not only take him to see the but also treat him to dinner. What a nice surprise. The professor asked Liu Hao if he wasn't spending Christmas Eve with someone, but instead with him. Posting grades right before Christmas. He must seem pretty cruel. Liu Hao said no without thinking. Compared to a date, he'd rather be with the professor. Besides, he didn't have a girlfriend anyway. The professor found this unbelievable. He actually laughed. It felt like this professor was really smooth, like he was fishing for information. Liu Hao answered seriously, looking affectionately at the smiling professor. When he smiled, his eyes weren't as distinctive. He looked really young. The professor also noticed the student was looking at him. Liu Hao told the professor when he smiled like that, he looked like a college student. The professor reached out and affectionately stroked the student's head. Liu Hao was a bit lost but didn't refuse. Seeing him so well, behaved and cute, the professor's hand moved down, placing it directly on Liu Hao's thigh. This touch on his skin was as warm as that day. Already shy, Liu Hao panicked a bit now. His body instinctively swallowed. He wondered what the intent was. With his heart pounding, he quickly grabbed the professor's hand off his leg, shyly turning his head toward the window. But his hand couldn't help but linger over the spot the professor just touched. Rain fell outside. The glass clearly reflected him. What was happening to him? He'd never had these thoughts about a man before. Shouldn't be excited inside just because the professor was nice to him. Listening to the professor's heavier breathing beside him, he said it was a bit hot. When he fiddled with his collar, he noticed marks on his neck. What was that? He didn't know if the professor was playing hard to get. After Liu Hao saw the marks, she smoothed her collar back on. Curious about the student's progress, she told him to submit a piece over winter break. She'd help look over the work's strengths and weaknesses too. Though she agreed to the professor's request, those marks on his neck really made her imagination run wild. They looked like finger marks. Could the professor be into something that intense? Next semester, Liu Hao brought the vessel he made over winter break to the professor. He wanted to bring it closer for the professor to see, but he said no need. He asked casually, "You used black glaze?" Liu Hao admitted it, and explained he got the inspiration from artist Qiji's work. Before he could finish explaining the piece's theme, the professor didn't want to hear more. He told him to take it away. Liu Hao looked shocked. Did he do something wrong? The professor felt his expectations for him were too high. Just copying others without any ideas, he didn't even know how to critique it. Liu Hao looked hurt. He wasn't trying to imitate artist Qiji or the professor. The professor showed only disappointment at his explanation. He thought his comprehension was pretty good. Such regret. Those words nearly crushed Liu Hao. He didn't make this vessel without any ideas. He just wanted to contain the time spent with the professor. But no matter the reason, it all sounded like excuses. He couldn't say it. So he grabbed the hammer on the table. A loud crack caught the professor's attention. Liu Hao smashed the vessel he made right in front of the professor. Those scattered pieces were just like his heart right now. The professor calmly watched the student before him. He was gripping the hammer, trembling. He kept apologizing. I messed up. Please don't say you're disappointed in me. I'll do better. Professor. Liu Hao cried like a kid who did something wrong. The professor came up to him with a smile. I told you, your attitude is good. He lifted Liu Hao's chin with his hand. He told him he was harsh on purpose. His job was to correct mistakes right away. He wasn't disappointed in him at all. He told him not to cry. I believe in your talent and in you. Liu Hao was confused. He hadn't shown the professor anything. Why would he believe in him? Looking at the professor's captivating face. Because you're different from other students. The professor said everything he least wanted to hear, then seemed to read his mind, and whispered what he most wanted to hear. He sincerely invited him to grad school. He had no choice but to accept. His junior was shocked to hear Liu Hao was going to grad school. He guessed right away that professor made him go. Liu Hao was like he was under the professor's spell. When his junior called him that, he still defended him. His junior was ticked off. Why do you always speak up for Li Shuyan? When he smashed his vessel, he only got an F. He heard attitude counted for a lot, so he even retook the class. But the professor wasn't satisfied with him from the start. At midterms, he criticized him in front of the other students. If you're gonna make it like this, don't bother. He made him smash his vessel. He's got zero respect for this professor. His junior wondered if Liu Hao really wasn't being bullied by him. Liu Hao thought about what happened and told his junior no. The professor was doing it for his own good. Deep down, he hoped to become the professor's special student. When the student was crying, hurt and vulnerable, he invited him to grad school and wiped away his tears. How could anyone refuse? 1 second the professor was criticizing him. Now he was so gentle. Looking at the professor's hand reaching over, so big, the professor noticed a scar on Li Hao's hand, gently touching it with his finger. How'd this happen? His brothers hurt him when he was little. If that wound had been treated right away, it wouldn't have scarred. But his dad didn't treat his wound. He didn't punish the brothers who pushed him either. Instead, he comforted him with these words. Though all people are good by nature, they make bad mistakes. Even if someone hurts you, better to forgive them than blame them. Believe in them. Later he understood. He wasn't his dad's first priority. After mom died, money became his dad's first priority. Before, finding someone to take care of him came first. No time for anything else. In this desperate chase, he just couldn't fit in with guys his age. He even got into fights with them. He even threw hands because someone was too blunt. If he could meet the person he's been looking for, he'd believe in him unconditionally, love him, and they'd be each other's first priority. The next year, Liu Hao advanced to his graduating class. This time he made a bust with love as the theme. Looking at the bust's eyes, something felt off. They were phoenix eyes. The lips seemed wrong too. What did the professor's lips look like again? Right then an image of lightly touching the professor's lips popped into his head. Why was he thinking about the professor? What's going on? Suddenly he felt someone behind him. It was the professor. The professor put his hand on Li Hao's shoulder, standing behind him to point out what needed work. Before the professor could finish, Liu Hao quickly turned and explained he wasn't done yet. The professor told him the foundation was good. Can he have it when it's done? Just now when he was alone, he was already thinking about the professor. Now he's here, so close to him. He just couldn't hold back anymore. He reached out and pulled the professor in, kissing him, holding his slim waist. He used so much force it made the professor step back. He wanted to really feel him, know him. He wanted even more to get inside and make him his. What kind of person was the professor? Why couldn't he control himself around him now? Right now he just felt lightheaded, excited. The professor gently bit and licked his scared palm. This feeling was completely addictive. Liu Hao's eyes went blank. The professor tapped him. What's wrong? He jumped, startled. That's when he snapped out of it. Looking at the confused professor in front of him, Liu Hao shyly turned his face away. He told the professor once the piece was done, he'd give it to him. The professor encouraged him to put his heart into it. Before leaving, he patted his shoulder. How powerful is the word love? This was the first time he fantasized about being intimate with the professor. It was strange. He tried hard to forget. He thought he had forgotten. Another year passed. He'd known the professor for 3 years. He was in grad school now. The scene of his dad greeting the professor was awkward. Dinner was with the professor. Looks like you and your dad get along well. Just your dad. Liu Hao answered the professor's question honestly. His mom passed away. The professor expressed sympathy. It's in the past now. Liu Hao was used to it. Though he was surprised his dad actually came to the opening ceremony. He never came to these things before, because he was always busy. The professor then asked Liu Hao about his siblings. Learning he was an only child must be special. Liu Hao said he was the youngest son who wasn't special at all. When he said youngest son, Liu Hao suddenly laughed at the professor. What's funny? I can't imagine you calling someone older brother or sister. At the student's question, the professor was quite interested. He showed a flirty look, propped his face with one hand, and said, Liu Hao bro. He didn't expect the professor to call him that. The student didn't know what to do. Seeing him flustered and embarrassed, the professor smirked and said he had a cousin named Liu Hao, but that Liu Hao was married with kids. He told the student not to be so uptight with him. Outside school, he could think of him as an older brother. Hearing the professor say that, Liu Hao's face turned red. He didn't know what to say. Looks like the professor liked joking around. While answering the professor, he gently touched his thigh where the professor had touched before. The whiskey was so bitter. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe he trusted the professor. He told the professor so many things. The professor just listened to him talk, nodding quietly. That small gesture made him feel more understood deep down. As his feelings for him warmed up, the alcohol brought back memories he tried to forget. Looks like he was drunk. Suddenly the professor called him, tapped the spot next to him, signaling Liu Hao to come over. You okay? The professor just breathed softly, loosening his tie to feel better. He saw the professor's neck again, but the marks from last time were gone. The professor leaned drunkenly on Liu Hao's shoulder. Now Liu Hao completely lost his cool. Could he hear it? He didn't know if the professor heard his heartbeat. He lightly touched Liu Hao with his finger. It felt like an electric shock. He didn't know what to say now. Whatever he said would probably ruin this moment. Suddenly the professor's phone rang. Liu Hao instinctively looked over with the professor. The professor didn't answer. He flipped the phone over. Kuiji, the artist he knew. Compared to a crazy person, you're mature. Lots of people my age only grew physically. As an artist's quality, it's great to find relief through work. Sometimes you need something other than creating to find relief. The professor was so tempting like this, but so warm. He was still hesitating, but now he finally made up his mind. Gripping the professor tightly. Let me take you home. He safely got the professor home. When he thanked him and was about to leave, the professor grabbed Liu Hao's shirt and told him not to go. So they turned off the lights in the room. The two lay there, quietly. Looking at where the professor lived, the darkness was filled with a familiar scent, both strange and comforting. A space like him, entering the professor's heart. His nervousness gradually turned to joy. The person who called the professor earlier, that was artist Kuiji I know, right? Do you two know each other? The professor said he didn't know him. He asked if he greeted the other grad students in his year. Liu Hao thought this was awkward. Freshman year he dated a girl his age. After he enlisted, they naturally broke up. After that, seeing classmates his age was pretty awkward, because except for him, they were all women. He didn't expect the student had a girlfriend before. The professor, so how long has it been since you laid next to someone like this? Liu Hao was silent for a moment. About 5 years. The professor said it had been a while for him too. He reached out and gently stroked Liu Hao's cheek. The professor's hand was warm. It felt like a luxury. After a breath, the professor asked, Are you lonely? Are you lonely? Sometimes I feel lonely, but not anymore. Liu Hao grabbed the professor's hand. A fantasy from the past was coming true in this moment. The professor was like his unattainable dream, sacred and untouchable, as if he needed his permission to dare do this. The professor taking the lead made him less restrained. Right now, he was all he could see. Since he'd never done this before, he didn't dare be so direct with the professor. He could only hold him tight. His heart was pounding. Suddenly feeling that place being touched, he couldn't help but flinch. Seeing Liu Hao so tense, the professor wanted to tease him. Why are you acting like I'm the one who wants you? You're usually so bold. The next day, gentle sunlight fell across the bed. He really didn't know how to face the professor after this. Suddenly he heard the professor outside talking to someone on the phone. He got up to check. He didn't know if it was because the professor noticed. After just a few words, the professor hung up. He looked calmly at Liu Hao. Did you sleep well? That was my boyfriend. Liu Hao couldn't quite believe it. He stammered, boyfriend. For some reason, the professor changed his story. He said it was someone he used to date. He adjusted his collar with his hand. The marks on his neck were clearly visible, though this time, they were the ones he'd left on his neck last night. Hearing the professor answer like that, Liu Hao thought he must have measured. He was curious what that person wanted from the professor. But the professor didn't tell him. It was time to head to campus anyway. That morning, he looked carefully at his place for the first time. It was huge and spacious. He wondered what was in the closed room. No wonder he laughed at him for being so pleased with himself just for getting through the front door. Wearing clothes that smelled like the professor. A mix of body scent, whiskey, and beer. Familiar yet strange smells, swirling together. With an uneasy feeling, he welcomed the first day of grad school with the professor. At school, Liu Hao was still wondering what kind of person the professor's ex was. He asked if that person was also a ceramic artist. The professor entered the code and opened the door. Inside, there was someone holding the bust he'd made for the professor. Seeing them come in, the man put down the bust. How long has it been since we've seen each other? To his surprise, the professor immediately cursed at the man's greeting. Li Hao was totally concerned. The professor seemed really angry. He walked up to the man with a sharp tone. The man put his arm around the professor's shoulder, telling him inside and talk. What he heard was a slam as the door closed. Li Hao stood outside, replaying the man's face in his mind. That was the artist Kui Ji. Could he be the professor's ex? Kui Ji told the professor to calm down. What are you doing in front of a student? The professor struggled, telling him to let go. Outside the door, Liu Hao heard the professor yelling and the sound of a slap. He had a bad feel. He immediately opened the door, asking, Professor, is something wrong? Before he could fully open the door, Kui Ji strong hand slammed it shut with a bang. Bao stood outside in a daze, breaking out in a cold sweat. What the hell was going on in there? Kui Ji pinned the professor against the wall with one hand. The professor stayed calm. What are you doing? You're mad I slapped you. Kui Ji smirked. Of course I'm mad. We haven't seen each other in forever, and you won't even make time to meet. He ran his finger along the corner of the professor's eye, running his fingers through the professor's hair. I was wondering what looked different about you. Men definitely look better with their foreheads short. His hand moved down and grabbed the professor's ear. He leaned in close with a greedy look. You got more handsome. The professor's face turned red from his teasing. He pushed him away. Did you bathe in Kalanga? Breaking in here like a thief. Seeing the professor's shy, adorable expression, Kui Ji was amused. Your passcode is still the same. No need to worry about thieves. He picked up the bust from the table, swinging it around and whistling. He said mockingly, I'd probably faint just lifting the cloth off this thing. This'll keep thieves away. Watching him handle the bust like that, worried he'd break it, the professor quickly told him to be careful. Kui Ji could tell he really liked it. A student made this. They must really like you. Is it a woman? The professor didn't answer. Smart Kui Ji figured it out right away. It's that male student. He thought the guy was pretty bold. The professor told Kui Ji he's a grad student. Is he? You were with him last night. That's why you ignored my calls. The professor looked annoyed. Why should I take his calls? I thought we weren't the type to call each other at night. Don't pretend you don't remember. Kui Ji was silent for a moment. He looked at his watch. Can we be the type who has a drink at night? Before leaving, he put his hand on the professor's chest, asking to meet up after work today. He said teasingly not to refuse. The professor clearly didn't want to. Kui Ji poked the cheek the professor had slapped. With a sly smile, you have to pay for slapping me, right? Sprinkling black glaze on a large white ceramic plate, scratching it roughly. You could feel the raw power in Kui Ji's work. In the darkness, lights flicking on and off repeatedly. Black and white opposing yet coexisting. Looking at the online bio about Kui Ji, then glancing at the professor, Li Hao rested his chin in his hand, thinking quiet. He thought back to the scene this morning. The professor's ex must be the artist Kui Ji. Did they date in college? Then he thought about the marks on the professor's neck that he saw in the car. Or maybe they hooked up recently. The artist Kui Ji. The artist Kui Ji used to live in America. Why did he come back to Korea? Could he even ask the professor about this? He was surprised this morning. He and the professor weren't dating. It wasn't weird for the professor to have an ex. He didn't want to say the wrong thing and make the professor dislike him. But on the other hand, he doubted whether he could exist as some vague color between the symmetrical black and white. It made him uneasy. Suddenly the classroom door clicked open. The professor came in, wondering why the student was still here so late. Li Hao had planned to go home. But with all his questions, he decided to stay and wait for the professor. The professor said he went to a meeting. That's why he was so late. Liu Hao looked at the professor in front of him. From his expression, he could tell he was happy. Just as he was about to ask, the professor suddenly knelt on one knee and reached for his zipper. Let me do something for you. Liu Hao was shocked and excited. At school. The professor chuckled. Come to my place next time. It'll feel great. Liu Hao stood quietly, enjoying it all. Suddenly, the professor stood up. The two kissed passionately. Liu Hao lifted the professor onto the desk. After a while, the professor asked what he wanted to ask earlier. Liu Hao's face flushed, enjoying the feeling. Can I come to your place today? The professor asked back if he wanted to ask something else. He didn't expect the professor to see right away. Liu Hao gathered his courage. Why do you like me? The professor chuckled. He pushed Liu Hao away with his hand. I'll tell you next time. Go home today. You need to change clothes, right? He didn't expect the professor to actually turn him down. He didn't know what to say. The professor happily stroked his chin, looking at Liu Hao, telling him to clean up and come out. Liu Hao hurriedly cleaned up the mess with his back to the professor. Still feeling great. What should he do? He didn't want to ask that. The professor opened the door. A tall figure appeared in the doorway. Liu Hao's eyes widened in shock. It was the artist Kui Ji. The professor actually walked toward him. Kui Ji even asked the professor what took him so long. The door closed. They just left like that, leaving Liu Hao alone in the dark classroom. He didn't expect the professor to just turn around and leave with the artist teacher. He thought back to that night they spent together. Afterward, holding him tenderly, not wanting to let go. He really liked the professor. pulling him tight, pulling him into his arms. Afraid the professor would leave the professor to a bar. How long has it been? The professor told him this was the first time they'd met since graduating college. Kuiji sighed. About 10 years. How does it feel after all this time? The professor glanced at him. He straight up said he got older. What? You said I got more handsome earlier. Then he asked about the professor's life lately. The professor had built up resentment toward him. About him coming back, he was pretty sarcastic. You went to study abroad, living it up. 10 years and you still haven't adjusted. Kuiji laughed. He grabbed the professor's hand. I missed you. I came back because I wanted to see you. I worried you were lonely. Hearing that made the professor even angrier. He yanked his hand away. His eyes filled. Kuiji, like a cunning fox, looked toward the professor's neck. He noticed the marks there. His eyes narrowed slightly. Let me ask you one thing. Are you messing with your student? The professor thought it was a strange question from Kuiji. Kuiji heard from the department head. The students gave the ceramics class terrible reviews. I know you're a perfectionist. But this department could go under because of one person. You should be more careful. The program is already niche. The department head keeps sighing. If even you're like this, you're just causing trouble. The professor had nothing to say. He could only sit there quietly drinking. Kuiji leaned in. Anyway, the dean called me back. I happen to be on break. Might as well see you too. Thanks for worrying about my life abroad. When the exchange ends, I'm gone again. Still trying to save my alma mater. He picked up a drink and drank too. It's our alma mater. I won't let your efforts go to waste. I'll help too. He even reached out to touch the professor's cheek. Fed up with this shameless behavior, the professor cursed. Seeing Kuiji not stop groping, the professor couldn't take it anymore and yanked his hand away. He cursed at him first. Why would I need your help? Who do you think you are? Help me. Stop pretending. He just laid into Kuiji. Turns out Kuiji wasn't going to take it lying down. He swung his hand and gripped the professor's neck hard. If you're so great, keep being an artist. Why become a professor? How ridiculous. With your personality, you don't have any close friends. Isn't it great work?